Welcome back to CBS Sports HQ. We talk about the reigning Super Bowl champs. When you win, you lose players because other teams want to get to where you're at. Here are some of the notable departures from Philly, including Josh Sweat and Darius Slay. The secondary took a big hit. C.J. Gardner-Johnson going to Houston. You know, the modern NFL is meant for parity, and sustained success isn't supposed to happen. That'll be GM Howie Roseman's task, and recent history tells us he's pretty good at stockpiling young talent, among other moves in the NFL. Yeah, some call Howie a genius. We also call this guy a genius.
Always.
Our Emory Hunt joining us here on HQ. So, Emory, we already tackled some of the teams that will have top 10 picks. Now we're going to be talking about the champs and others that have made the playoffs. Let's start with Philadelphia. We showed you the notable departures here. So give me a sense of the draft needs and how much you think Howie Roseman's going to be able to do that.
You know, he's going to win the draft regardless because good players are going to fall to him. But the reason why he wins the draft, guys, is because he always drafts a year ahead. So I'm looking at offensive tackle. Lane Johnson can't play forever. I'm also looking at edge rusher. And I'm also looking at defensive line depth. So for me, Philadelphia always does a great job of addressing the point of attack. And if you're able to do that, we know that's where football is played, won and lost, up front on both sides of the line of scrimmage. They have to replenish what they lost. And this is a good draft to do so. And factually, they're picking 32nd. So I can see this being tailor-made for the Eagles and Howie Roseman to have some more success.
Let's get to their NFC East rival, the Washington Commanders, the first year under Jaden Daniels. Beyond a success, Commanders, as we know, have plenty of money to spend, already made some moves in free agency. But where else are their biggest needs right now when it comes to the draft?
I think they need a dominant player coming off the edge. And I like what they've done in terms of stockpiling free agents to come and help out this defense and also help out the offensive side of football. But edge rusher, pass rusher, they need right away. They need someone that can really be a threat down in, down out, game in, game out. Running back, I know that's surprising to some with what they have already in tow, but they need somebody that can be a legitimate game breaker, not someone that can gain yards, someone that can literally break the game open. And always when you have a young quarterback, there's no downside in adding some more receiving options around him. I know they brought in Deebo Samuel. I know they have scary Terry McLaurin. I know they have a slew of good tight ends, young prospects that I really like. But add some more weapons around Jaden Daniels is always a positive thing.
And to Jordan's point, a fantastic rookie season for Jaden Daniels, especially in the playoffs. One of the great what could have beens are the Detroit Lions, Emory. They were decimated by injuries. What are the draft needs for Motown?
Are you saying what could have been from last year or what in 91 when they went to the NFC Championship? There's a bunch of what could have been for the Detroit Lions. I will say, when you look at their offensive line, which has been the reason why they've had so much success, you also look at when they were drafted, 2014, 2015, like, man, they're getting up there. I think they have to go offensive line, guard in particular. I'm eyeing a guy like Tyler Booker out of Alabama going to Detroit. I think that's where they need help the most. The offensive line getting younger, adding more guys there. Edge rusher. We saw what happened when Aiden Hutchinson went down. That kind of killed what they were trying to do off the edge. They need someone that can really bring that spark opposite of Hutchinson. And wide receiver is another sneaky, underrated place for them to add in the draft. And this is a great draft for wide receivers, for all these positions. I grade so many doggone prospects, I'm always looking deep. So it's always a great class, but for wide receiver purposes, for Detroit being their third biggest need, this is a great class for them to do that.
Let's get to the Rams here. Of course, Matthew Stafford returns to L.A. Is the biggest need here a little help for him offensively?
I would say the biggest need is cornerback. I look at their cornerback situation. They have some good players, some guys that are probably more glorified 2s and 3s, which is fine because that's your starting corners. But I think they need a bona fide number one, someone that can really lock down one side. So I would say number one would be cornerback. Wide receiver, Jordan, would be second.
Okay.
Because, yes, they try to fill in some gaps, but wide receiver definitely is one where they need some help. And how about quarterback? I know Stetson Bennett was drafted, you know, a couple of years ago to be their guy for the future. But, man, Matthew Stafford can't play forever. He flirted with retiring. He flirted with trying to go somewhere else. I know they just re-upped him in terms of his contract. But quarterback, looking down the line, there's going to be some guys on day 3 that you can take and groom. And I feel like the Rams would be a great spot for that.
Emory, let's get to the Vikings. What are the needs?
All right, listen, I don't want to be petty and say quarterback, but I will say this for Minnesota. I would say interior offensive line. Because if you're going to bring back a quarterback that is coming off of an injury, one that relies on his ability to escape and evade and get outside the pocket, you want to keep that offensive line very intact. So I say offensive line, interior offensive line more in particular. I know they're going to have Darisaw coming off injury. You hope he's healthy. Probably could even add a tackle there in terms of depth. But how about safety? Harrison Smith, re-up. He's a very good player, future Hall of Famer in my opinion. He's not getting any younger, and you're going to have to find someone behind them. They lost some key pieces in free agency, but depth at safety and also defensive tackle. I think when you're looking at the interior of the battery for Minnesota, O-line, D-line, right down the middle, interior is where they have to get more depth on both sides of the ball.
How about the Packers? Emory, where are you leaning with this?
Cornerback, it depends on the day whether or not, Jair Alexander wants to be there or they want to get rid of him. So I'm tired of playing that game. I'll just get somebody in place of Jair Alexander because I like him as a player. But if he doesn't want to be there, then we know how that tends to work out. But I would say cornerback would be a big need for Green Bay. I know wide receiver could be up there for Packer fans. Always want to get a receiver because those guys were banged up a lot last year. But how about defensive end? That's another area where they can use a little bit more depth along the defensive line outside of Rashawn Gary, who I really like and has performed really well as a pro. And offensive line depth is always key for Green Bay because we saw them go through a mass unit a few years ago. Last year it was the receivers. The year before it was the offensive line. So getting deep on the offensive line and adding another edge rusher, I think go along with being cornerback being their biggest need.
And let's finish with the Bucs.
Linebacker is an interesting one. I hate to say the same things all over again, but they're not getting any younger, guys. And so linebacker would be where Tampa, really should focus on. Jahai Campbell, you see right there, our guys locked in on that. I'm locked in right there with them because that's a great pick. Guard would be another place for him and tackle. So depth at those two positions kind of help keep Baker Mayfield upright and continue to spearhead that run game. But linebacker, if they don't leave the draft with Jahai Campbell, I'm going to be upset because that's like the ideal fit for what they want to do defensively.
All right, Emory, thanks so much. Hold tight there because we have more draft needs to work through. As you take a look at the current odds to win the NFC, currently the defending Super Bowl champs, the Eagles, sit there at +300, followed by the Lions. Was a little surprised with that?
With the Lions? Well, hopefully they'll be healthy the full season.
I'm not sold on that. Tommy.
When we come back, we've kept Emory around. We'll tackle the AFC. We know the quarterback's elite in that conference. Draft needs for some of the best ones in the NFL. Welcome back to HQ. The Chiefs hit a home run when they selected home run speedster Xavier Worthy in the draft last year. And once again, KC made a deal with Buffalo at the draft to help them beat the Bills in the playoffs ultimately. Yeah, everyone still points at Mahomes, but even just recently, the Keon Coleman, Xavier Worthy deal, where it was weird because every time Worthy did something great and Coleman did something bad, they would turn to this draft night trade that ultimately became what it was. And boy, he was worth that selection and then some. Take a look at the numbers in the playoffs. A tremendous effort in the Super Bowl despite Philadelphia dominating Kansas City. We'll wait and see what type of encore Worthy will have for Kansas City in 2025. All right, back here with Emory Hunt with some draft needs for playoff teams. We tackled the NFC earlier. Now it's time for the AFC. When you look at Kansas City, Emory, what stands out to you?
I'm tired of looking at all the same receivers. Like everybody's 5'11", 175, right? But we'll get to them in a second. The biggest need is edge rusher. They need someone that can really bring the pressure off the edge to go along with Chris Jones and George Karlaftis, whose workmanlike effort is appreciated, but Chris Jones is what stirs that drink for Kansas City. But they need another pass rusher. They've been trying to find one for a long time. Defensive line depth, that's more on the interior defensive line, get that rotation going. And at wide receiver, they need a big dog at receiver. They got a bunch of guys that are fast and can stretch the field. They almost remind me of the Smurfs from the Washington team back in the early 80s, or Mark Duper and Mark Clayton, the Marks brothers with the Dolphins. Everybody was 5'9", 185, but they need a big dog at receiver to go along with the speed guys. Now you're really cooking with gas.
Yeah, Bills still kicking themselves that they passed up on Xavier Worthy. But how can they make it right this time around for this upcoming NFL draft, Emory?
Jordan, this is a really deep football team. I love the depth at a lot of spots, so it's hard to find, hey, this is a glaring need. But how about cornerback for Buffalo? I know they got rid of Kyer Elam, who I was really high on coming out of Florida, because they hit on Christian Benford, who was an underrated player coming out of Villanova. So they missed on the first-round pick, but they were able to nail undrafted guy, late-round guy in there. So I think they do need corner. I also feel like they're thin at safety. They can use some depth there, but also wide receiver. Never a downside of adding a little bit more talent at wide receiver. I know Keon Coleman was drafted last year. Continue to stockpile receivers around Josh Allen until one of those guys really hits and becomes the go-to guy. Now, Coleman could be that this year, but I also feel like receiver still is a place where they can go.
Our buddy Ryan Wilson has him going to another Texas wide receiver, Matthew Golden, to fill that speedster role
that spot,
that Worthy would have been able to do last year. Boy, the AFC is loaded. What about the Ravens?
They need a pass rusher, man. Like, this used to be one of the positions where the Ravens, it was rubber stamp that they'll nail. Whoever they drafted on defense, excellent. Whoever they drafted on the offensive line, excellent. But they have been whiffing at edge rusher for a long time since Terrell Suggs, and they need to find someone that can really get after the quarterback. That's why they lost to Buffalo. They really couldn't close out the ball game on defense and get after Josh Allen until late. Pass rusher is one place where they can go. Cornerback is another area. I know they drafted Nate Wiggins in the first round last year. Look how that worked out for them. Go at it again. Get another corner that can lock down. You need 3 good ones in today's game. And tackle. They are thin on the tackle spots. You have to continue to stockpile talent behind Ronnie Stanley, whom you re-upped this offseason.
Let's get to the Texans now, who need a boost. We just saw our own Mike Renner's mock draft. He has the Texans selecting an offensive tackle. Is that the biggest need, Emory?
I wouldn't say it's the biggest need because they went ahead and added some free agents. You hope that, a guy like Cam Robinson can be the guy right now, but they do have to get offensive line depth. I think that's the third biggest need because they've done so much of free agency. But defensive tackle, I feel like they can go there first. Getting depth along the defensive line on the interior is key for them. I think that's where they're thinner. And also at cornerback, I feel like they're able to add another piece there, straight to that nickel spot behind what they already have, and continue to bolster the depth. This is another one of these teams that have drafted well, signed a lot of good free agents. This is a very good football team, which is why they were in the postseason. But right now it's about stockpiling talented depth behind those frontline starters.
Let's get to the Chargers, where the scary thing for the AFC is that they were supposed to be a year away from being good, yet they were good year one with Jim Harbaugh. What about the Bolts with their draft needs, Emory?
First, they need to bring back the blue helmets of the Junior Seau era. Then they'll start winning these big games, right? Because right now, people look at them think they're soft because they're wearing powder blue. But outside of that, tight end is a big need. They have to find a safety blanket, a security blanket for their quarterback in Justin Herbert, but also defensive line and interior offensive line. The point of attack took a beating, I feel like, for the defense side of football for the Los Angeles Chargers, as my Gardner is right now in the back behind me, but also interior offensive line is where they have to stockpile talent and depth behind their frontline starters as well.
Of course Emory Hunt has gardeners. I just love that. I love it. Emory, let's get to the Steelers here. Spoiler alert, quarterback, right? Number one need. If they don't go off and get Aaron Rodgers, we are hearing that they're bringing in Ole Miss quarterback Jackson Dart for a pre-draft visit. Quarterback, number one here, the biggest need?
Yes. Yeah. Even if they go and get Aaron Rodgers, they need a quarterback. You touched on it. They bringing in Jackson Dart. I would say find another guy to kind of help you out at the quarterback position. But offensive line depth, they got hurt last year and it kind of moved some guys around. Now they're getting some guys back. Patanu is coming back healthy. People forget he was a first-round pick who was supposed to be the starter right there as a rookie, but he was injured. Cornerback is another place where they can go because they signed some guys, but they've signed some veterans, some older veterans like Darius Slay. I think they got to get younger, a little bit more athletic along the back end with what they already have in tow with some of the young guys they picked up a couple of drafts ago. So yes, quarterback, offensive line depth, and cornerback are where the Steelers, I feel like, have to go immediately.
All right, I think I know the answer to this already because you and I had already talked about it, but a producer wants to ask, do you think Shedeur slides all the way this far to a slot that, like, the Steelers would be able to take him?
If Shedeur gets past the Cleveland Browns, cancel the Browns and put in the London Monarchs or the Barcelona Dragons, because I'm done with teams doing dumb stuff in the draft. You clearly need a quarterback, but if he does fall past both Cleveland and the Giants, Pittsburgh should be in play to move up to go get Shedeur Sanders. So, yes, he would be an ideal fit for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Yeah,
Emory's on record. He doesn't even think he'll get to 3 to the Giants because he thinks that if the Cleveland Browns are there, they should get Shedeur Sanders.
I mean, it would make sense, right?
After Cam Ward.
Yeah.
because he won a quarterback. That's how it is in the NFL. Denver got its quarterback with Bo Nix. People thought, man, you're gambling with your pick, and it turned out well. But what does Denver still need to do this April?
Running back, man. And listen, I'm a big Jaleel McLaughlin fan. I interviewed him down at the Hula Bowl, his draft class. Excited to see him get an opportunity. He was a star Division II runner at Notre Dame College. Then he transferred to Youngstown State and balled out there. And I'm glad he got the opportunity. But they need someone that can be that pace setter. He's a change of pace guy, but they need a pace setter at running back. I think that's a spot where we could see one of these amazing backs go in the draft. Outside of that, defensive line depth, still building depth on the back end of their defensive line. I'm talking about interior defensive line behind the edge. And at wide receiver, I know some people may say they can go receiver early in the draft, but they also need someone that can really stay out there and be a threat. Sutton, to me, is a solid player, but he's been banged up a little bit. But they need someone outside of Sutton that can really go and get the football and really be a threat on the perimeter. I love that they answered the tight ends question by bringing in, Evan Ingram to go along with Adam Troutman. So that's one issue taken away in free agency. But receiver is another place where they have to go.
All right, Emory Hunt, we'll leave it there. Busy season for our guy. How many days away are we? 20 days now away from the NFL
draft? It's coming up.
It is insane. Time is flying by. Here is a look at the With the First Pick podcast that you can watch. Now all you got to do is scan that QR code on your screen and watch and listen wherever you get your podcast for the latest NFL draft talk.